Houston, we have a problem. Oil leak is back on the back of the block. This is some bad news right here. All right, so a few weeks back, went ahead, removed the valve cover and all the timing components and replaced the cam seals, put everything back together, and I've been monitoring the oil leak on the back of the block from day to day. So it's been about 3 weeks now and about 200 miles later, and here comes a revelation right here. And as you can see on the back of the block, oil leak is back on the same location. So apparently new cam seals was not the resolution to this oil leak. So it really is a shame, wasted all those hours disassembling and reassembling this engine. So today's game plan is going to be a lot simpler than last time, which is basically remove all the timing components. So we've already got new cam seals in place. So what we're going to do is make sure we got Honda bond on this side of the timing set right there, because that could be a leak right there. Because I remember when I was resetting the timing cover, I had to shift it once or twice because basically the fuel injector harness was getting my way. So it may have interrupted some of the Honda bond right here. And number two, the cam seal retainers may not have been sealed properly. So I'm gonna make sure that on the very edges on the left and right side of each cam seal is gonna be some Honda bond. So basically I'm gonna have to take the valve cover off, lift up the cam retainers, and then take those cam caps off, and then basically reseal underneath the cam caps, and then retorque everything and put everything back together. So it's not gonna be as involved as removing all the time components. So fingers crossed, it's gonna fix this oil leak on the back of the block, because this engine is getting frustrating right now. So let's go ahead and get started on this. Okay, so first step of the process, I'm gonna go ahead and unplug the battery. And then when I disconnect the alternator, there's gonna be no chance of arcing that wrench on a piece of metal and having a spark or whatnot. So I'll remove those two alternator cables, and I'll move this 10mm bolt right here, pull the electrical backwards. And then I'm gonna go over here to the power steering hose, undo those two 10mm bolts right here, and just pull this thing backwards. And then right here on the strut tower, you got this engine electrical harness. So take this 10mm bolt off, and I'll be able to move this harness closer this way, out of the way of the corner of that valve cover. I'm gonna go ahead and undo the grounds right there, one ground right there, one ground right there. Take the PCV valve out, disconnect the vacuum lines from the air intake tube, remove the spark plug and coil pack cover, 4 10mm bolts, and removing the spark plug and coil pack cover and this alternator cable will expose more 10mm bolts, and we'll go ahead, take all those 10mm bolts and carefully pry out the valve cover. So let's get started on disassembly. Okay, valve cover successfully removed. This is probably a new record for me, about 45 minutes doing so. So let me go ahead and show you guys what's going on underneath. Now on this outside lip of the head, that's basically where the valve cover makes contact, along with some Honda bond on the corners of the cam caps, along with the corners. Now I didn't see any oil on the outside of that Honda bond. So what I'm doing is I'm looking carefully right here on the cam caps. So my area of focus right now is right here on the corners. Now this half moon piece of metal right here basically removes from the head itself, and that basically holds in place the cam seal underneath. So the course of action is actually remove the cam retainers right here with all these bolts, and then you got 2 10mm on the end right there. And then this cam cap seal will come straight up, and we'll make sure that we seal on the underside properly, and then we'll go ahead, put it back into place, torque to spec, and we'll do the same strategy for the front side right here. So the key here is to make sure you have sealant between the head and this half moon cam retainer. Now, I don't know if you can see back there, but that's the cam seals right there, that gray area. Now, there's a little bit of moisture, and I think that might be grease, or it could be oil from the cam cap retainers leaking out on the sides right there. So this is gonna be the quickest method for resolving this issue, hopefully. So we're gonna keep our fingers crossed. And if this doesn't do it, then basically we're gonna have to tear the timing apart again and redo the cam seals. And we could have scratched camshafts. So for whatever reason, if these cams are damaged by being scratched or gouged or whatever, and these things are continuously spinning on the inside of those cam seals, that'll basically tear the seal up. So I'm hoping that's not the situation, and I don't want to buy new cams for this engine. I believe you probably could sand this out with emery cloth if that's the case, which I don't think it is, but you just never know with these old engines. So we're going to go ahead and reseal the cam cap retainers right here on the top and make sure there's this Honda bond on underneath where it contacts the head, and especially on this corner and this corner right here. Now, I know when we last did the cam seal replacements, I know we've got sealant towards the inside the engine, but I'm not quite sure on the edge right here. So we're gonna go ahead and reseal this thing. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and look up the torque specs and the torque sequencing for these cam retainers right here. Now, just remember, always work on a cold engine. You don't wanna remove these cam retainers on a warm engine. Okay, both front and rear cam retainers are removed. Majority of them are 12mm bolts, except on the ends, these four are 10mm. So here's our cam retainers, all removed from the H22. Now these are the cam cap retainers in question right now. So I'm about to pull these things off, and what we need to do is seal between here and here. So right there underneath, that's where I need to put emphasis on putting Honda bond. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull these things off, inspect the bottom side, see if there's any Honda bond, and we'll go ahead and reseal and put everything back together and torque to spec. So let's go ahead and pull those things off and see what we got. Alrighty guys, went ahead and got the front cam cap off, and let me go ahead and show you guys what I'm seeing. Now, I don't know if you can see right here in this channel, it looks like a little bit of oil buildup right there, and you're basically supposed to put Honda bond on the bottom side here and the bottom side here. Now, last time this engine was assembled, there was only sealant on the bottom side right there. So we need to put emphasis on putting Honda bond right here and some Honda bond right there, because I can see some oil residue right there. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there is some oil right there. Now this flat surface right here on this half moon shape, that's basically where the cam seal locks in position. So that's basically where it contacts the head right there. So I'm gonna go ahead, clean this thing up as best I can, and we're gonna go ahead, definitely put some Honda bond on this point right here and this point right here. But before doing so, let's go ahead, remove the rear cam cap seal retainer, and then we'll go ahead and clean things up, put some Honda bond on the underside, reassemble the cam cap retainers, and then put the cam retainer plates in position. We'll go ahead and retorque everything to spec, and then we should be good to go. So we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, so let's proceed. Alrighty, that takes care of the removal of the rear cam cap retainer. Now let me go ahead and show you guys what's going on. I see some oil residue right there and some oil residue right there, and these are the points we need to put Honda bond onto. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean the underside of this thing up, put some Honda bond right there and right there, and then we'll go ahead and be able to reinstall everything. So things are looking good so far. I hope that's our culprit right there, this point and this point, and there was a little bit of oil on where the half moon's at on the surface, and that's basically where the cam cap sits into place. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this thing up. So hopefully this is our issue. Cross our fingers and let's go ahead and start reassembling things. All right, so bottom side of the cam cap retainer, this is where Honda Bond goes, and this is where Honda Bond goes. I presume no Honda Bond is needed on this area or this area right here. So our main emphasis is sealing off this area right here. All right, successful reinstallation of the cam plate retainer right there, and also the cam seal retainers on the right hand side. Now the bolts from here to over right here are 12 millimeter, and the bolts right here on the very end are 10 millimeter, those four. And I got the torque sequencing right there. So without boring you with all these torque specs, I believe this was 1, that was 2, that's 3, 4, and then you zip over here, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9, 10, 11, 12, something like that, or vice versa, one of the two. That's basically what you do is you torque it from center to outside. And then last but not least, you get these 4 10mm bolts right here. And taking a closer look at the cam cap seal retainers, I got a little bit of Honda Bond seeping out, and that's what I like to see. So I know I've got sealant between the head and the cam cap retainers. And this thing is torqued down to spec. By the way, torque specs right here, 9 foot-pounds for these 4 10mm bolts. And then these 12mm bolts right here on the cam plate retainer, that's basically 19 foot-pounds. A little FYI right there. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up the bottom side of this valve cover, and then I'm gonna go ahead, clean up the valve cover gasket itself, put a little bit of Honda Bond on the corners, and especially on the corners of where these cam humps are at, and then we'll go ahead and reinstall the valve cover. Alrighty, H22 valve cover is officially reassembled with all the connections. So obviously you got the valve cover, you got the spark plug cover right there. You got your air intake tube on the valve cover itself on the back corner. Got the PCV valve in place. Alternator electrical wire branching across the top of the valve cover. Alternator connections. Power steering connections. Ground wires right there in front of the valve cover and also on the side. 10mm bolt back in place, holding the wire harness. And as you can see here, around the front corner of the valve cover, have a little bit of seepage of Honda Bond. That's okay, you don't want too much. In the same situation here on the right hand side, just a little bit of seepage. Now as far as Honda Bond's concerned, it takes about 60 minutes for it to basically set up, and then a full 16 hours to fully cure. So I'm gonna play it safe. I'm not gonna drive this car till tomorrow, so I got everything connected, including the battery. So tomorrow we're gonna go ahead and fire this thing up. I got the back side of the block dried up, and I'll go ahead and take the flashlight if I take this thing for a ride and see if our efforts have paid off. So fingers crossed. All right, guys, you saw it here first. Back of the motor block is now dried off of all the oil remnants. So we'll go ahead and monitor this area carefully. Knock on wood, we have success. All right, here's a breakdown of the tools and materials I needed. 3/8 torque wrench, 3/8 ratchet, 3/8 extensions, 10mm, 12mm socket, 10mm wrenches, 12mm wrench, flathead screwdriver, rubber mallet, 3/8 electric ratchet if you have one, Honda Bond, flashlight, rubber mallet, and brake parts cleaner. And that's basically all there is to it. Relatively simple tool selection right there. Cross your fingers, checking after day 1 of driving. I don't know what to think, guys. I don't know if this is remnants from oil dripping down the timing side of the block and it's finally found its way down, but I'm gonna go ahead and dry this off and continue to monitor the situation day by day. Really is disheartening right now. Okay, day 2. Just took Project CV9 for a 16-mile round trip, and taking a look at the back of the block right there, looks like it's bone dry, so I don't know what to think. I'm not sure if this solved the issue or not, but like I said before, I'm gonna continue to monitor the situation. Fingers crossed and say a prayer. Day number 3, let's check out the oil situation. All right, guys, that is some reassuring news. Check that ledge out. It looks pretty dry to me. I am very happy so far. So hopefully last night was just remnants. So fingers crossed, we'll just keep checking this thing daily as we drive this car. Things are looking good though. Day number 4, cross your fingers. Alrighty guys, check it out on the backside of the engine block. No oil spots whatsoever. We're not in the clear just yet. I'm gonna still check this thing, within these past 2 weeks, and then we'll be on the clear. So fingers crossed, prayers said, so we'll continue to keep checking this thing. Day number 4, day number 5, not quite sure, losing track here. All right, I don't know if you guys can see there, to the left side of the wiring harnesses, that's the back of the engine block ledge. And lo and behold, that looks pretty dry. Things are starting to look positive with stopping that engine leak. But we're gonna go ahead and keep checking in these next 2 weeks. Alrighty guys, this wraps up the process of the cam cap seal resealing process on the Honda H22, and this will probably work for many other Honda motors as well. Now we're not quite in the clear yet. We have checked this thing for 5 days and there's no oil in the back of the block, but I'll go ahead and continue to give you guys updates as the days go by. Now if you found this video helpful or entertaining, please give me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching and have a fantastic day.